I'm really, really delighted today to welcome Abby Williams joining the webinar. So Abby, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
If it's all right, Abby, I'm just going to give a little bio and then you can kind of extend it or reduce it depending on what you think. But just wanted to say, Abby, so you and I got to know each other probably about 6-7 years ago when you were at LinkedIn in
yeah.
And it's just been amazing watching your journey as a business leader, a public speaker, now an author, as well as a business owner. I think 17 years working with tech organizations like Oracle, LinkedIn, Facebook, and lately, is it Udemy? Is that how we
Udemy.
Udemy, how you say it? Yeah. And then bringing out the book, 10 Traits of Great Leadership that are often overlooked. I love that title because you know exactly what it says on the tin. You know what you're going to get. It's exactly that. Yeah, and of course it makes you want to read more because you're like, well, what are those 10? So that's a great, good marketing line there.
Thank you.
Make you want to read on. And also, you're now CEO and founder of Lead Not Lag.
Correct.
A new organization. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about, just enrich that a little bit, tell us a bit about your journey and then bring us up to date with Lead Not Lag.
Okay, so I'm Abby Williams. I'm based in Dublin, Ireland. Welcome to my home. I've spent over the last probably 17 years, about 30 years here in Ireland, working with tech companies in revenue, leadership, capacity, growing revenues for these companies, growing the teams and scaling teams, building managers, building people, building competencies. So it's been a great journey. Exciting ones. It's not without ups and downs, as you know yourself, but there's been a great time of learning and just learning what works in building businesses and growing businesses. And now, as a founder of Lead Not Lag, I work with companies, growth startups and enterprise companies, actually really helping them grow their business, helping them grow their leadership capacity as well, because I'm really passionate about ensuring that the up and coming businesses do better than the existing ones. So yes, there you go.
Fantastic. And just for everyone listening, and by the way, thank you for joining us on this cold Thursday lunchtime. Abby's the real deal. I got to see her in her setting at LinkedIn in Dublin when I was trying to convince you to go with Impulse. You didn't, by the way, but we stayed friends anyway. And to be fair, I think LinkedIn bought. Who was it they bought? Was it Glint or
Glint? Yes.
Yeah. They're okay. Anyway, moving on. I was really, really impressed watching you in your setting and seeing the impact you were having in terms of leadership and the influence you had with those senior leaders in that organization, and just such a rich background. But also I was really wanting to get Abby on because I think what you bring to the people space and to the engagement and leadership conversation is quite a commercial edge, and that's quite often missing. I think would be fair for everyone listening that sometimes it can kind of not be put front and center, although that is beginning to change. And I think a lot of people directors and people within the HR world are realizing, look, if we want to have more influence, we've got to really connect this to the financials and to the impact it can have for our company positively. So that's part of the reason I want to get in. And we've got a really packed agenda for everyone today. So just give some highlights. We're going to be going through some of the lessons, and we're looking at culture, leadership, and engagement. And the reason for that is they all intersect, right? You can't start talking about culture and what you value and how you want to behave without then talking about leadership and the role that leadership plays in influencing that. And then you can't stop talking about, you've got to connect into engagement and the impact that has of engaging people. So we kind of felt like, let's bring it all together. That's partly as well because Impulse, whilst we lead with our engagement platform, we do a lot now in coaching leaders, and we're doing more and more in culture programs, and we'll share a bit more about that because it's really going up again. We're seeing people revaluing and really re-looking at their culture as being a point of differentiation in the workplace. So we're going to be talking about some of the lessons from 2022. We're then going to go and look into 2023 and go, what should you be focused on? I think Abby's going to give us hopefully 1 or 2 books that we should be reading towards the end, share with us, not least her own. You've got 2 authors on, but I'm not going to lie. I think if you were to buy 1 book this Christmas, I'd go get 10 Traits of Great Leadership that are often overlooked. Whilst, of course, I think The Engagement Revolution is good, I would encourage you to go and get Abby's book first. But before we do, if it's all right, and Abby obviously knows it's going to happen, I just wanted to bring my colleague Jodie in, who I'm going to bring in a moment, who works on the Insight team, because we've just got a couple of really interesting bits of insight around line managers and what we saw over this year. So Jodie, great to have you join us for 5 minutes. Jodie's absolutely maxed out, and I said to her about 10 minutes ago, Jodie, would you mind joining? It'd be awesome just to share some of the data we're seeing. So again, hope this is really helpful. Don't worry, you will be sent all these slides afterwards. But Jodie, why don't you just talk us through, because we're talking about leadership and line manager, and we learned some really interesting kind of powerful things this year. So why don't you just, I'll let you share.
Yeah, absolutely. So the line manager role has become so pivotal when it comes to engagement. It's such a key engagement factor. We've collected huge amounts of data on this across all our clients from a variety of sectors. And what we've looked at is, because we know the role has elements that are more transactional, such as more typical line manager tasks, such as distributing workload, managing teams. But actually, we've got to also look at the more relational factors that relate to making sure people feel empowered to get on with their work, and also the role modeling the types of behaviours that we want to see and the values within the organisation as well. So pulling together all of our data, we looked at 9 different elements of the line manager role to see how each impacts engagement, as we wanted to know, well, where do we really need to focus? Line managers have many tasks that they're responsible for. How do we pinpoint that and refine that and say to organisations, look, this is where you need to focus. This is where you can have the greatest impact on how engaged people are. So on the left-hand side here, you can see some of the different elements that we looked at, such as demonstrating the company values, keeping people well informed. And when we take all of these different elements here, the 2 that come out on top, really interestingly, are around feeling trusted to get on with the job and supported in my role. So we need line managers that are balancing these 2 skills, which, if we think about what those 2 mean, they are juxtaposed to each other, that we want to be trusted to get on. So we want to be left alone, empowered to go away and do things, but also supported. So we know we've got someone there to help us. And actually, when we look at the impact that these have on engagement, it's really staggering. So the first one on trust, for people that feel trusted, we've got an engagement index score of 81%. Versus for those who do not feel trusted by their line manager, just 28%. Wow. So it's a staggering difference, 53 percentage points, which shows the huge impact that this particular factor can have. Very similar picture when we look at support. We've got a 52 percentage point difference there as well. So coming in very closely behind trust there. So these 2 factors, if we take these into consideration with the bigger picture, also worth thinking about the evolution in terms of ways of working that we've seen over the last few years. We know that this has become more and more important. So the key management competencies, such as listening, keeping people informed, giving feedback, these are all still very much required, very much part of the role that we cannot overlook. But actually, they're just the tip of the iceberg. They're what we see on the surface when it comes to engagement. And potentially we would class these skills as being more measurable as well. In some contexts, they're more visible day to day. People might be more aware of whether these things are happening in the organization. But actually, when we look at the most engaged teams and the highest performing teams, what really underpins this are these relational factors of feeling trusted, having that support, building that sense of empowerment within the teams, and allowing people to have that sense of ownership and encouraging them along the journey with that.
Jodie, thank you. That was fantastic. Really, really appreciate. Just stay here one moment in case there's any questions. I really hope everyone. I thought it was a great way to start. Just some really interesting insight. And Abby, I'd love to get your perspective on. Does that chime? I saw lots of nodding of head through that. What's your view on this? The key role of the line manager, and also this support, but also trust.
Yeah, I'm so delighted that this is stuff that we're talking about. And I feel like as a society and as a profession, we need to talk more about this, right? So typically what we see in an organization is you have the line manager in the middle that doesn't get any investment or training or attention. Everybody above requires so much from them. Everybody below requires so much from them. So the line manager is in this position of exhaustion, and no surprises why it's difficult for them to be their best self or do the best work, right? And this affects revenue. It affects people. People don't feel trusted. People don't feel like the line manager care. People are not doing their best work. So it's affecting revenue of the business. The bosses above are requiring everything from these line managers. There's no support for the line manager. There's no training. There's no coaching, and they're not getting it. So therefore, they're not giving it.
Yes.
In sales organization, we do a lot of training for salespeople, but a lot of managers are not trained.
Yeah.
They're not trained. We don't do it. And this is why I do a lot of leadership workshop for leaders, for managers to understand what does it actually mean when we talk about trust, supporting your team, knowing when to coach, who to mentor, and who to delegate. What does coaching actually mean? Because a lot of, some managers think it's telling the employees what to do. Yeah. That's the mentoring is telling somebody, teaching somebody based on your experience. Coaching is asking the right questions for the person to come to their own solutions, right? A lot of line managers are not trained, so I'm not surprised at these stats. And then the other final thing I'll finish with is, it's one thing I talk about in the book is leading by love in chapter 1. And what that really means is just being yourself, your personal great self, hopefully, in life and in work. So a lot of managers feel like, because I'm a manager, I have to be a certain way, I have to come across a certain way, and I have to demonstrate my authority or, lead by my authority. But at home, they're more patient, they're caring individuals. But at work, they're just like, hey, where's the work? There's no how you doing in one-to-ones, check-in with the team and so on. So it's really helping them know that actually what employees want is the real self.
Yes, it's really, I love the way you put that. Yeah, I love the way you put that. I'm just going to bring Jodie in, because that squeeze middle, that's what we refer to line managers as. I thought you put that really well. The squeeze middle. I always think of my middle son, who's constantly like, I've got my older brother who's better than me, and my younger brother who gets more attention. And I always think line managers are a bit like that. They're getting pressure from above. What's our view on sort of that squeeze middle? Because I know we've talked about it quite a lot.
Absolutely. What we're seeing is really interesting, particularly with our focus on emotions, and when we're looking at how managers feel. We can compare that to how team members and how senior leaders are feeling. And with the line manager group, we see the highest levels of commitment, which shows that they really want to be doing a good job, particularly personal commitment. They're really enthused by the role, but actually they also have the highest levels of stress. Yeah. So that wanting to do a good job and all that extra pressure is really resulting in them feeling that their workload is unmanageable. Again, they're the group that score highest on things like not feeling that they can achieve a healthy work-life balance, not feeling that they are able to cope with their workload, and feeling overstretched and most likely to reach burnout through that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Judy. I'll let you go now. I know you had lots of other things to do, but appreciate you joining. So just building on that, and for everyone listening, I think there's something really key here, and Abby, I want to get your view on this, which is, firstly, you talked about actually their key role. They're like the hinge on the door. They're between sort of the organization and the employees. So their role is so vital, right? But then, as you rightly said, like how much coaching versus training, and there is a real difference. Like training for me is, go and learn how to do a spreadsheet. Versus the softer skills, the coaching, which is asking a question, what makes you a good listener? Why do you think you sometimes can be distracted from work if that's an issue going on with them? But asking that more open question, what's holding you back from being better? What does good look like? Which the way I would describe that, I'm interested in your view, is like the reason I think people go for training and mentoring is it's a bit like having a Mars bar. It gives you an instant hit. And you kind of go, ooh, I had an instant hit, I got something. But the problem is, just like a Mars bar or any kind of chocolate, it's pretty short-lived, right? And you don't necessarily see the shift. Whereas coaching is a bit like having more fruit, right? Where you don't necessarily feel like it's doing you any good, and but if you wait long enough, you'll realize actually it's done you some real good. So it takes a bit longer with coaching. And you don't necessarily get the instant. Sometimes you get some aha moments, but often it takes just that little bit longer because you're making them do the work. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think that there are different ways to do it, right? You know, the easy way is just to tell the person what to do.
Yes.
But then that's you saying that your way or that way is the best way. So it's really, coaching is really us working together to explore what could be an excellent way. And what you're doing by that is you're tapping into the creativity of the person. And that's the role of the manager, is to tap into the creativity of your team and the diversity of your team that they didn't even know was there. It's your ability to bring that out. That's actually the role of a manager, not necessarily just tell people what to do, how to do it, and keep going.
So Dan, thank you. Abby, thanks for that answer. We've had a question already in, and please do put your questions in as we go. So I'm gonna throw out quite a controversial, potentially thought, and Abby, I'd love to get your view. And it sort of links to what Dan's written here, which is: do you find that a lot of people are still promoted to managers because they're good at their role? In other words, they've got some kind of skill, and then they're just expected to be a manager. And just kind of adding to that, Abby, while you're thinking about that answer. Mm-hmm. So where I've got to is in 2022, and maybe for the last X number of years, there really are no line managers anymore. There are only leaders. And then this idea, because manager, unfortunately, when we use that word, if you're anyone over 30 and you've read any books, it refers to basically doing a task. And the point of the manager was they focused on the task, right? And they took all these people in their team and they said, let's achieve this task together. Whereas I look now and you know, we work with, you know, up to 100 companies, right? Almost all what are deemed line managers are actually, they've got to inspire people, they've got to motivate them, they've got to coach them, they've got to get them involved in the purpose, they've got to live the values. But when we refer to them as line managers, it almost diminishes, or it reduces, that's probably a better word, it reduces their actual role, which is really to be an influential leader in their area.
Absolutely.
What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's the ideal, but the reality is we have 99% of managers. In fact, maybe managers, line managers, maybe we should say supervisors.
Yeah.
That's the reality of what we see, because this is what they've learned.
Yeah.
Remember that people are doing, they've learned from their manager who just managed by spreadsheets, who just demanded, who just expected to do it this way because I said so, kind of leadership. That's what they've learned in terms of what good looks like, and that's what they're demonstrating. And because a lot of organizations don't do enough investment to show what good looks like, to deculture what these managers have learned, it's like a cycle that just keeps going around and around and around. So for example, during my career, I've been privileged to learn from terrible managers and great managers, right? From those terrible managers, I learned what not to be doing. But some people learned and thought maybe that's the way it is. So they pretty much watch that and mirror that and do exactly the same thing, right? So you have, to wrap that up, you have people who have been, back to that question, you have people who maybe are high performers and be promoted to a manager without training. Yeah. Then you have people who have learned from they've learned the wrong way. Yeah. So these are the kind of managers that we have, unfortunately, that dominates the manager circle. Yeah, that's why we need more training. We need more development, and they need more focus and investment in order to become what they can be and what good looks like, and that which is that leader that we talk about.
Yeah, and I just picking up on what Dan said, and I know you've answered that to a degree, what he said. Dan, certainly we see in a lot of the organizations we work with, people are being promoted because they were good at the skill. Yeah. You know, they were good within their department, and it was like, well, you know, hopefully they can do it. And actually, the interesting bit is, in quite a lot of cases, the real leader is in the department and is influencing, but just doesn't have the badge or the title. But because they're maybe not as good as at the, say, accountancy skill or the building skill or whatever it might be, they don't necessarily get looked at to be a leader. But actually, people go to that person because they're more influential, they're better at inspiring, they listen better, they ask better questions.
Yeah, and they're givers, you know, and that's how I know, you know, when I'm running an organization, I look at those that naturally care about the team goal, those that it just naturally comes to them to ask certain questions in terms of, Abby, how are we performing? People that just naturally care about that. You can see the, you know, the natural leadership tendencies versus a high performer that's just been promoted into a leadership role. And then also the role of a leader is a selfless role.
Yes.
It's a role that carries other people and is a thankless role most of the time, right? And that's why it's important who we select into those roles, because what we find is if you promote an individual performer, top performer, into a leadership role, they're used to doing things their way and it's their thing, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that they understand that leadership is about others. It's not about you anymore. Now you're not managing just your goals or just your targets. Now you have to do it through people and you can't control everything. And that's a different kind of competency.
Yeah, that's really, really good. I love Hannah's put a question here. Hannah's this is like, if you were to get to the nub of the issue within corporate world about growth, because we've been talking about, come on, we need to help them grow and improve. Anna said, we have so many managers that we want to develop as coaches to take their management leadership to the next level, but with such busy workloads and so many of them, how do you even go about starting that? And Hannah, I would say, like, so in a lot of the coaching workshops we run, we go, what's the one thing that's going to get in the way of you growing and developing and progressing in your leadership? And they all get there eventually. Go, it's the diary, it's the time, right? It's the number one factor that stops them. And so they kind of go, so Matt, what's the magic bullet? And they're all like, they're waiting, on 10 ducks as they go, there is a magic bullet. Change your diary. Like, there is literally no other way to do it. And no one likes that answer, by the way. Everyone looks really depressed at that point. Because you go, there is literally no other way than you have to take some things out because you'll have meetings in. You will, most people in corporate world live their life by their diary, right? And until someone's willing to go, I've got to take some things out to grow and learn, and actually put in different types of meetings where I'm actually leading people through influence, through asking questions, through inspiring, through conversation, through listening, until people start to change what's in the diary and how much is in the diary. I don't see. I'd love to know your view, Abby. Is there a magic bullet that you know of?
Yeah, so how I did it and how I believe where I think the impact happens is actually from top down. So, when I was running my organization, the commercial organization at Udemy, firstly, it comes from hiring. It comes from, okay, what am I trying to achieve? What are my strengths and what are my gaps and what kind of leaders and managers and directors are needed in order to achieve this goal? So clarity of vision, clarity of the culture that you're trying to build, and clarity of how you're going to execute that culture. Then clarity of the type of hiring that you need in order to make that happen and to build the kind of culture. Because I know that diversity inclusion is a culture that it's not a nice to have, but it's a need to have for successful business, actually. As I'm hiring and looking for leaders, I'm looking for, those kind of competencies and understanding and so on. And as these leaders come in, there's a conversation around, look, here's our culture, here's what we do, and here's what we don't do. Here's how we lead, and here's how we don't lead, right? So that clarity has to come from the top in terms of here's the culture of the organization, here's the vision, here's what we're trying to achieve, and continue to hold all of us, each other, accountable for that. And then also, if somebody maybe shows up, like, in the past, if one of my managers showed up to an employee, not in the culture that we're trying to drive, which is a people-centric culture, we're going to have a conversation in regards to that, a coaching conversation to go, hey, what happened? What do you think we can learn from this? How do you think we can, avoid this the next time, and so on and so forth, right? For example, I got feedback about a manager, because I used to do skip levels with different teams and so on, just to get the temperature and the impulse of the organization. Nice. And I got a feedback about a manager or director, about this manager. This person was sick, and I guess they wanted a bit of empathy and compassion around being sick, but this manager just went straight for the task. Hey, can you deliver this? And so on and so forth. So we had that conversation, and that manager was probably just in the motion, right? They didn't realize it, but however, bringing this awareness to them in those conversations, that's where you drive the impact. However, if you as a leader don't value those kind of things, of course, you're not going to expect that from your team, and you're not going to drive that accountability. So I truly believe that it comes from top down. But sadly, a lot of people at the top don't lead this way, don't value these things, and they don't even understand how this ties into driving a successful business. Because at the end of the day, engaged people do their best work.
Yeah.
If your people are not engaged, if they're not feeling cared for, if they're not feeling a part of the purpose, if you're not managing the whole person, the business is not going to happen. It's not magic.
Yeah, and that's it's a good just reminder as we come up to the halfway point. Can't believe we're already halfway through. Is that engaged people do their best work, and we Jodie set out at the beginning that actually they're 2.3 times more likely to be engaged if they've connected well with their line manager, if the line manager is supporting them and trusting them. And I was also interested in that juxtaposition because a lot of people can't cope with having an and. They need it's one or the other rather than and so it's trust and support. And I find that sometimes the grey, if I can put it like that, people don't like necessarily living in the grey, which is it's not this or it's not that. It's not one way or the other. It's both. And so this, we were fascinated when we saw this data come out from over 50,000 points of data from across Europe, and it was saying really clearly people are looking for their manager to trust them and let them get on, and it is get on with the job. And then there was this absolutely almost beside it, as she said, 52-53% saying alongside it, but also be there and support me. And you and I mean, we've been in enough coaching conversations, at that point the manager goes, what do they want? What do they want? Do they want me to trust them, or do they want to support them? So how do we help manage, because there's a maturity of conversation there that goes, this is an and moment. It's trust and support. It isn't one or the other, and we're complex human beings. But how do you help them and everyone?
It takes me back to what I call versatile leadership. It's not a plug and play. And what you find a lot of managers do is they try to lead if you have a team of 10 people, you can't lead everybody the same way. And that's why it's important to get to know your individual people. What are their fears? What are their goals? What makes them tick? Like really spend that time building trust. Then you're going to understand that, okay, John comes to me when he needs help. So if he's quiet, that's him just doing his thing. He's very open. He knows where to come when he needs help.
You know them well enough.
Exactly. You know them well enough. You know that, okay, Sarah is the kind of person that I need to check in often with Sarah to see how she's doing and so on. Maybe she's a little bit introverted. I need to be proactive there. And then when I reach out to her, then she'll open up and tell me about what's going on, right? It's really about knowing your different individuals and then adapting your style to what the individual needs to do their best work. But a lot of managers, that sounds like too much work for a lot of managers. So it's again, it's the harder way out, so they don't do it.
Have you ever done this, Abby? And for everyone listening, I wonder if you've done this, where at some point in your working life, you just did let go of some stuff and you stopped doing it, whatever that task was, and the world didn't collapse. And actually, you discovered you did have a bit more time. And the reason I raise it is going back to this time thing that Hannah sort of talked about. We work with lots of clients who go, basically, they're a little immature in their culture of engagement. So they see that engagement sits with either HR people team or it sits with the exec. We go, there's a truth to that. They have some role to play, but actually it's within the team. And the point of transformation in any organization is the team. Candidly, it doesn't matter what the top person says. Until I think our government is just a great example of that. They're pulling levers all over the place and nothing's happening. Everyone's going, whatever, we'll do what we want. Because until you've got the team leaders actually leading and influencing and guiding and facilitating and listening, nothing really changes.
What I'd add to that is I think it's back to clarity of the goal. Right. So, in my organization, we all know what our 5 priorities are. So anything that is not driving towards that goal, we all know what it is. Any activity that is not connected to that goal of maybe X amount of engagement rate for our organization, which is our people, X amount of revenue, that contributes to our goal and so on. So any meetings or any extracurricular activities, my leaders know that it's not priority because we all have that clarity of what our vision is and what our goals are and what our priorities are. And that helps to eliminate or not feel like there's certain meetings that my leaders were supposed to show up, but they didn't show up and I didn't hold them accountable to show up because I know that it's not priority, right? So it's as leaders, it's important that you help your teams, help them know what priorities are, or what priority is, because some people feel bad. They see something in the calendar, they feel like they need to show up, but it's about empowering people to go, wait, hold on a minute. Is this meeting adding to my objectives.
Yeah.
And
Well,
question that and be okay.
Yes, yes, which requires a trusting culture where you can do that and people don't take
Yeah.
offense or their ego gets in the way and they go, they're having
Yeah.
a go at me. No, I'm just asking you a question.
Yeah.
So we just start building on that. And again, for everyone listening, I'd really encourage you to go into 2023, right? It needs insurgents who are going to challenge. And again, I don't know any other way. There's lots of ways to challenge, right? You can do it in a really soft, gentle way. You can do it in a really direct, and, so we understand that. And hopefully everyone listening understands there's lots of different ways to challenge, but to be insurgents within their organizations, to go, some of what we're doing is frankly ridiculous. Because it's just something you said there, Abby, and I was thinking about, we've been in a number of pitches recently where they've sort of sent us their 7 values, their 5 pillars, their promise, their DNA, their golden thread there. And I'm like, shit, excuse my French. I'm like, is this a joke? Like, I'm a reasonably intelligent person, right? And I have no idea what their goals are, particularly when it comes to people.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's acting like it's normal. I'm like, somebody has to go, this is not normal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and also, I'd be interested to know, like, the best, because you work with some amazing organizations, Oracle, LinkedIn, Facebook. What this kind of clarity, as you said, of vision, but also like the goals, particularly when it comes to people, like what they're trying to achieve. Is it true that the less you have, the more you can focus and get on? Is that, am I wrong in saying that?
I don't know if it's the less you have. I think it's just back to the clarity of the plan, clarity of execution, clarity of communication, rewarding and recognizing and knowing when you hit certain milestones and ensuring that everybody's following this and executing to this. And most importantly, it's been co-created, so it's not my plan, it's our plan. Right. So we're executing together, celebrating together. I think it has to do with clarity of that versus the norm of people.
Well, so let me try this, because I fully agree around the clarity. It's hard to be clear when you've got 24 like 24 objectives. I think that makes it quite hard to be clear. Mm-hmm. And I think that's certainly one of the issues we've seen over 2022 is in the positive intention of wanting to deal with some of the cultural issues that they're facing and engagement and leadership. Mm-hmm. Organizations we've seen over the year have come up with, the D&I targets, the new values that potentially have been worked bottom up. But all of that then doesn't create clarity. I think you're helping me here, and hopefully those listening, it's like, it's actually just created a bit of a muddle. And individually, if you look at each and go, it's really clear what we're doing there, really clear what we're doing there. But then you try and tell that story to 1,000 plus or even 500 plus employees, and everyone's like, what there? How does it join up and how does it add up? And I think that's it's almost like we're over complicating and we're making it more complex. I think that's the point. I'm wondering if you've seen that too. That sort of.
Yeah, I think when I say clarity, I mean, firstly, I tend to think in 3, maximum 5 in anything, right? And then it's really about what is it and what it's not. Because if you say your culture is, let's say, move fast, that means different things to different people. So I always encourage, people leaders, CHROs, and leaders in general to really have that continuous dialogue of, hey, John showed up this way. This is what we mean when we say move fast. This person showed up this way. This is not what we mean when we say move fast, right? So that consistent, communication of what good looks like and what good doesn't look like as well is super important, because people are coming in with their own different filters, with their own different, and we're just leaving it for them to assume what we mean by these values that we've written on the walls, and then exemplifying that as well and celebrating it. Celebrate the behaviors that you want to see in people. Hey, one of the key values that was important for me when I was running the organization at Udemy was winning together. Yeah. So when I saw people sharing, and when I saw people sharing what's working for them, going out of their way to help somebody else, it was important to celebrate that moment, going, listen, this is not you achieving your targets. I appreciate the fact that you went out of your way to do X, because that's the way to get that person to do more of that. You have to pause and recognize it.
Yeah, no, really, really like that. You're sparking another thought in my mind, which was about. So I love that clarify the win as well. What does it mean to win, and then mark the moment.
Yeah.
Again, everyone listening, I'd really encourage you to look at 2023 and go, are we marking the moment? Again, we worked with a number of clients this year who achieved some really great things, and they didn't really mark the moment. There was no kind of sort of pause point to go, wow, well done us. We got to this place. Whether that's an achievement on a score and on their engagement survey, or whether that was, they pulled the values together, whatever it might be. So I'm going to change things up a little bit with only 20 minutes left, and we're going to hear from Abby about some books she's going to recommend. I'm going to tell you toward the end what the engagement average score was and whether it's gone up or down compared to 2021. So stick with us. We've got about, say 15 minutes left, but 5 lessons from Impulse. I'd love to just get your view on these, that as we've looked back over 2022, what we've seen across all our clients, across lots of different industries and in most regions of the world. First one is this thing of, we are starting to see, how I'm doing is, line managers are dead, long live the leader. And whether it's a team leader or whether it's the organizational leader, we are seeing people more and more kind of going, we've got to coach them, we've got to train them. Like, we're starting to see a real, that probably hasn't been on the agenda for 7-8 years in the way I'm seeing it now. We're really recognizing we've got to invest. It is the leaders we create. And I'm going to give my little thing on this. I'd love to know yours, what your view of this is. My thing is, forget everyone who's been there and a leader, whatever. I would focus on, work on the next 10 years and go and get everyone who you're bringing in. I'm not talking an age thing here, whether they're 21 or 61, but bring those people in and start really working on them early before they've had a few years already in. But I'd love to know, what about this, long live the leader, but the line manager's dead?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think our world is waking up to what good looks like. So employees are actually pushing for better leadership, right? I've left certain companies because I'm like, no, that's not what good leadership looks like. And I don't deserve that. So bye. Right. So people are in the know of what good looks like. So they're rejecting that old school, archaic, non-people-centric leadership, actually. So I think, in the future, it's not even going to be a nice to have. If you're not leading the right way, people are not just going to follow you, because nobody's desperate now to stay in any job or stay in any company. We're all aware of our values. We're all a lot more purpose-driven. And so
I always think, what were we doing in our 20s? Why did it take Gen Z and millennials to wake up to this? Like, when we were being beaten over the head and told.
Yeah, we were just robots, just doing what we're told.
I look back and think some of the things I did, months and months of working 16, 17-hour days, and feeling bad if I left at like 8 p.m. because the leader was I could still see him at his desk. Who's leaving?
To be honest, I was always a troublemaker anyway, so I never.
Well, that's how we connected, because I only did 5 years at corporate, and then I told them what I really thought, and they didn't seem to take well to that. But that was partly because I was young and immature and hadn't worked out how to say it in an interesting way. I just told them straight. Second one, for those, everyone's still on. We've kept. Thank you, by the way, to everyone. Great to see so many of you. In fact, we stayed pretty much at the number of people who joined, so that's awesome. Culture is back on the agenda. So 2022, there is no doubt we have seen people are looking to create culture and workplaces that attracts the talent they need and helps them retain the talent they have. And thankfully, and we're really thrilled with this, we've seen a lot of culture workshops, a lot of, when we say culture, for me, I define that as what we value as an organization and therefore how we behave. But I'd love to see, what's your view of 2022 around culture?
Yeah, totally agree with that. It's culture is going to move to culture. For me, it's how you do what you do. It's how you show up. It's how you show up to your employees in good and bad times. It's how you show up to your clients. It's how you pick your investors. It's how you show up to your board meetings. It's just how you show up every day, right? People are watching, right? A leader who's just talking culture but not leading by culture, especially when things are difficult, right? That's where you throw the toys out the pram, and then all of a sudden
squeezed. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and I think our society is waking up to this. People they want to work for a company that truly lives its values and culture. So, yeah, totally agree with that.
Yeah. Very good. Third one is workload and well-being have been still a huge issue in 2022. So one of our biggest issues on all the surveys comes out of people got too much work. And it's very much linked to because we ask emotion question, how do you
Mm.
feel, and a range of 12 emotions, and it's really linked to stress. And we've seen stress be pretty high this year, and the theme being workload. And part of it for us, what we're seeing is this constriction in the job market, particularly in Europe and America, around there's just not enough people to hire to do the roles that are needed. So therefore, you're ending up doing probably one below you and maybe half above you, and then your own as well. Have you seen this sort of workload and stress in 2022?
Yeah, and the call, I think, or what I'm seeing is people have to define or create their own boundaries, because the fact is, with organization, your shareholders want more, your organizations want more, they want more. It's never going to reduce, they're never going to want less, right? So this is a work that you almost have to do for yourselves. And when I coach companies, I talk to them about having mental health apps. There's so many mental health great apps out there, like Oliver, and different kind of apps, right? So it's really trying to bring attention to that and lead by example, right? In my previous organizations, I'll catch people out on the holidays. You need to take a holiday. In fact, let's go together. I'd be very vulnerable in terms of, hey, I don't feel well today, or I don't want to be here today. Letting people know that it's okay to feel that way. It's okay not to be awesome every day. Yeah. So pretty much leading by that example, and really, and all of that again contributes to a successful business, because again, a well and whole human delivers the best work.
Yeah, it's really interesting when I know it sounds really obvious this, but when you think about those two words, well and being, am I being well? Is my being well?
Yeah.
And having a vulnerability, listening to you there, it's really difficult for leaders to have a vulnerability. I remember, was it Antonio, I forget his last name, Lloyd's, the CEO, who came out and said, actually, was it a bit of depression or stress? And that was seen as quite a significant. I remember the BBC covering, going, he's one of the first CEOs to ever say that he's feeling this way. I don't know the ins and outs, so I'm not going to get in that, but I thought it was interesting that it's we're starting to see a bit more of that happening, which allows other people to be vulnerable.
Absolutely, it's a sign of strength. And then also, you're just saying, I'm a person as well, just like you. I have feelings, I have ups, I have downs, I have issues, just like you.
Yeah. So let me go on to the fourth one. We're seeing inclusion and empowerment are increasing in 2022. So they've gone up about, overall our survey's gone up about 3 percentage points. So again, for everyone on the call, well done to you if you've been a part of that, because we know, particularly since George Floyd's murder, across the corporate world, there was a real desire, starting desire to make a difference, to look at diversity and inclusion. As truly awful as it was, there's no doubt it was, it sped up conversations, and it actually led to probably things happening that may have taken another 3-4 years to occur. Which, whilst there's a long way to go, we're pleased to see the trend is beginning. So much more focused on diversity and inclusion, and people saying they feel a bit more included, and seeing some changes in diversity. What's been your view, Abby, of 2022 on those?
Yeah, I totally agree. Again, I think it's back to the leader. It's back to and that's why we need to, you have organizations where this is a nice to do, and you have organizations where actually we need to do this. This is a must do, right? And again, it's back to the leadership. So many people said that we're going to do this and that, when the George Floyd thing happened. Some people executed on it, some people didn't, right? So again, it's back to the leadership. Is this real for you, or is this performative? And why does it matter to your clients, to your business, and to your employees?
Yeah, the performative is really interesting, because I think people can kind of sniff that out now. Employees, they're good at kind of something's not right here, right? This is a bit performative. This is not transformative. This is not going to bring real change. So we got 8 minutes left before Lucy's going to come back on and wrap things up and tell everyone how they can connect to you, how they can get hold of your book, but also how just more generally find out more about what you're doing. But I'd just like to shift a little bit to 2020, or finally to 2023. So from Impulse perspective, we're going to be talking about, and actually we're going to bring out a little paper about this, around the 3 C's. Back to your point, keep it clear, keep it 3 to 5. So we're going to talk about connection for 2023, that building connection. Actually, you just said it perfectly a moment ago about team leaders and organization leaders need to work more at building connection, which is a heart thing, it's an energy thing, it's an emotion thing.
Mhm.
Any thoughts on that for you?
Yes, build connections, not transactions.
Oh, I'm stealing that.
Full stop.
I sort of promised to quote you. No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and that's how you build trust. That's how you get to know your team. That's how you know how to drive the best out of your people.
That is great. I hope everyone captured that great value bomb there from Abby. Build connections, not transactions. That just needs to be a mantra for the 2023. Just kind of get that in there, because it is so true that, yeah, all team leaders and organizational leaders could be so transactional. Right, we're here. Come on, what are we doing? Let's get on with it.
Yeah.
Get to the business of it, as opposed to let's build some connection. And actually, then when you do get to the stuff, the work, you flow and you get through it much quicker and faster.
Absolutely. The acceleration is just amazing. And then you find out things that you wouldn't have found out if you didn't build that connection.
Yeah, which leads me to, I have to ask you, sorry, at this point, when we talked beforehand and sort of prepping for the webinar, you talked about going from 2 to 25 million with an organization in terms of their turnover, their revenue. Was that right?
Correct. Yes, in 2 years.
Over how many years was that?
2 years.
2 years going from 2. I need you in my business. But come and just talk to us about, how did you, through leadership and focus on engagement, leadership and culture, how did you help take them from 2 to 25 million?
Yeah, so it's pretty much 3 pillars, right? It's really vision, values, and culture. Clarity in terms of our vision, what we're trying to achieve from a people perspective, from a revenue perspective, from a culture perspective. How do I co-create this with the organization? How do we all rally behind that and get that clarity, what it means as we hire in people, as we retain people, and so on, right? What is our language? What is our vision? And then the other piece is that leadership development, right? In terms of competency coaching, development plans, right? Know your leaders and your organization, knowing that you care about not just them for now, but their own development as well, truly investing in them. And then that piece together helps towards, revenue growth, right? Because everybody has that clarity. Everyone rallies behind, who we are, what we're trying to achieve, how we're going to celebrate, how we're going to have fun, when we need to accelerate and when we can, when we need to decelerate, and so on. So those are the 3 pillars for success. And then also it comes back to the kind of people you hire. Surround yourself with not just people that are like you, in fact, people that are not like you, people that bring different strengths to the table, so that they can raise the bar. That's the magic that a lot of people are missing, because they're like, oh, I like this person, or this person, we're so similar. No, that should be a red flag for you, actually, if you find yourself gravitating to people that are similar for you, because that's the same information that is brought to the table, but somebody else who has a different cognitive diversity, or comes, with a different, from a different walks of life, will bring something different to the table that nobody else has thought about. That's the secret to success.
No, I love that. I mean, I've only ever had one experience where I realized I wasn't the right type. Because I reckon I talked about once, which was at a rather large insurance company in London. And they were looking at me I was already doing some interim work, and they wanted to bring me in full time. And I remember the interview, basically the first question he asked was, so just remind me, he's sort of 60-plus-year-old man, he went, what university did you go to? And I went, Lancaster. And he went, shame. Because they were very heavy on Oxbridge. And one of them particular, I won't say which one, but basically one of them. And I wasn't that. And I went, well, yeah, Lancaster, I think it's, top 20.
Good escape for you.
Yeah, no, I'm very pleased I didn't get that. So we've got connection, and thank you for sharing that. Collaboration. So we're finding that the hybrid working, and again, for those listening, be interested, if I'm sure you found this, that whole hybrid working has been quite a challenge, along with workload, along with enablement. So we're putting that all under like collaboration, because how do you now in a hybrid world, how do we make sure our collaboration is not just as good as it maybe was when we're all in the office, but even better? Like make sure we've got the right tools that we need, and how do we make sure that we're not overwhelmed with workload? And we sort of call all that collaboration. Any thoughts on that for 23?
Yeah, I think it's just being agile and flexible to move with the times, right? You have some people who are holding on to the, oh my God, you need to be in the office, but then you're losing talents that, for them, they need to be at home, but they're going to deliver their best work, right? So it's really having that flexibility again to tailor your strategy versus a one size fits all. Focus on the goal, but don't be too attached to how you get to the goal.
Yeah, really like that.
And then in collaboration, the other piece I'll say is it's self-orientation. And what I mean by that is, focusing on, how do we all win together? What are your goals? What do I need to do in my department to facilitate that, versus just me. That helps to enhance collaboration. And then the last thing I'd say there is compassion. We talk a lot about empathy. Empathy is great, right? That's understanding, where the person is coming from, or trying to understand where the person is coming from. But compassion goes to the next level. It leaves enough space between you and the person so that you can actually help the person.
Yeah, it's not just I understand your pain. It's, well, let me help you in the pain.
Exactly. It's kind of like the post that you see on LinkedIn. You have some people going, oh yeah, people are getting laid off, oh, this is sad. But you have some people that are being proactive and introducing people to people and giving them references and so on, right? That's compassion. And we need to move to that place of compassion.
Really like that. I'm gonna, because we've got 2 minutes left. Thank you everyone for staying with us. It's fantastic. And I'd love to hear from Abby. The last one, by the way, is culture. Which we've covered quite well, so I'm not going to go into that. And that's about really bringing your values to life and making sure you put inclusion at the heart of that. And I think we've covered that quite well over the hour. But just with a couple of minutes left, and as Lucy begins to come back in, Abby, I'd love to know from you, is there anything you would recommend in terms of resources, books, anything that you've read or watched or listened to? Go, everyone listening should really have a look at this.
So my favorite book, and I try to read it every year, is The Art of Happiness by Dalai Lama. And I love that book because it just really teaches you lessons for life and how to let go and how to show empathy and that compassion that we spoke about. So that's number one. And my favorite podcast is Diary of a CEO. I just love how Stephen Bartlett challenges himself, challenges status quo, and challenges people that comes to his platform. So yeah,
really like that. I would say I've really enjoyed listening to a lot of Eckhart Tolle lately, actually, and his the reminder in any leadership role to let go of ego.
Yes.
And I think Dalai Lama, a lot of it is from Buddhist teaching.
Yes.
Tolle's tapping into, but just how much the ego gets in the way in organizations.
Yes.
And we're not actually dealing with
the enemy. That's another book.
Yes, very good. Very good. So I love that. So Abby, for me, I just want to say a huge thank you for joining. Really appreciated all that you brought today and the conversation we've had. And Lucy, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, thank you, both of you. Thank you so much. It was fascinating to listen to. We could have done another hour, I'm sure. There's so much to get into. But thank you, everyone, for staying with us. I will be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow or Monday once we've got the webinar edited. So please keep an eye out for that. If you have any questions following the session, please send them over. You'll all have my email address now. I will be also sending Abby's details, how you can connect with her, what she can help organisations with, and where to get her book as well. So please keep an eye out for that. It is our last session of the year, so I hope everyone has a fantastic, probably well-deserved break, and we'll be keeping you posted with our very exciting webinar plan for 2023. So take care, everyone. Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas. Goodbye.